Hi, Chuck Geiger with the Las Piedras Railroad on the YouTube channel, getting into podcast number 9. It was probably last year that Boomer Diorama said, you've got to start talking to these guys that have awesome layouts, that have great YouTube channels, that we need to get the word out. And that's why I'm hooking up with Allen Cooley, our chief operator, chief cook and bottle washer of the Kansas and Western Railroad. Allen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the invitation.
All right, it's a pleasure to have you here and talk to you about your railroad. Can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background in model railroading and how you got to the point where you are right now with the Kansas and Western on YouTube?
Well, this is actually my 7th layout. I've been with HO scale model railroading since I was 7 years old, when my folks bought me my first train set for Christmas, set it up on the dining table like many of us did that first time. Ran that around. Mom helped me build a small grain elevator out of a old eggnog carton, and we were off and running there. I think I was into the hobby then for maybe a couple of years before it kind of got to be a pain to tear it up and put it down, because all I had was the dining room table. I think my dad tried to give me a piece of plywood under my bed, but you know, kids, they have short attention spans, and I was no different. And then through high school, I had a layout that was not very big, but it was something I worked on for a while. And then, as you know, as we all do growing up, getting married, having kids, I was just kind of in and out of it. But about almost 10 years now, I built the house that I'm in, and actually designed the basement with a layout in mind, because I had decided before I built the house, I was definitely going to get back into the hobby, started collecting things again, and designing the basement was a real treat, because it was like, okay, I am totally in charge of this from beginning to end. Worked on that layout for about a year, had the main line running in a similar fashion to the way it is now, and then got remarried and had a number of kids that were joining the family that needed a bedroom. And so had to tear the layout down. It was kind of sad, but you know, kids need bedrooms, so it wasn't really a difficult decision to make that happen. Fortunately for me, those kids were not too far from adulthood, and when that last one moved out, still got one left here, but that's a different bedroom. I was able to rebuild the layout, so now I'm on number 7. I'm far and away the farthest I've ever gotten on any layout. All my previous layouts had gotten to mostly track completion stage, several structures built, but scenery was never something I really delved into until this one. And now I'm having a lot of fun with it. This layout is definitely, I wouldn't say necessarily a dream come true, but it's pretty close in terms of everything that I've ever wanted. So I'm having a great time, and being able to include all my subscribers, viewers, commenters, in the process, especially with the polls every 2 weeks, has just been an extreme added joy to that.
That's a great hook. I love the poll. So on the Kansas and Western channel, each week now, Allen asks, what do you want to see me work on? And you go over everybody that's, given you a vote for different areas of the layout. And the Gorge, of course, has been winning the past couple of weeks. That is a great hook. Tell us how you came up with that.
Well, it's not an original idea. I'm not that smart. I had seen that idea on other channels. I don't know if it was necessarily the same way that I do that. It might have been a monthly thing. It might have been more specific. I know that YouTube channels offer a voting package, I guess, whatever you would call an option. I think you select maybe 2 or 3 options for people to vote from. And so I'd seen that before. And it happened to coincide with the point in my layout where the bench work was pretty well all complete. And I was starting to work on several different scenes, and realized I am doing the total shotgun approach. I am working on a little bit here, a little bit there, accomplishing almost nothing. And so I thought, what a great idea would be to get everybody involved that wants to be, because, you know, I had a good number of subscribers back then, had a lot of good comments, a lot of supportive comments. And I don't think there's any way I would have done this without all the support. And the Model Railroads YouTube community is just fantastic in that regard. And I can't say that enough. But taking that, decided to put the onus on the public to help me focus. And so that's a big part of what it is. It's I can't focus on my own, so I'm going to make you guys help me do it. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry to derail your thought. Pick it up. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. That's okay. We're just having a good time here. Anyway, so I've been doing the poll now for about a year, and it's actually every 2 weeks. I decided on the frequency because I've seen a lot of people were doing updates once a month, and I felt for how much time I was able to put in, once a month update was not often enough, because I thought I was able to get a decent amount of work done in a shorter time. On a weekly basis, though, I felt that was too frequent, because there are some weeks where I'm just too busy with work or family commitments that I would get almost nothing done. But I thought 2 weeks was a kind of a good average, I guess, or compromise. So that's how we do it. I do a construction update every 2 weeks, follow that up with the poll all weekend, and then the following Monday we do the poll results so everybody can see what happened, and then I basically decide what to do. And there are several people out there that are concerned for me and my well-being that I'm allowing other people to build my layout, but I have to insist that's not the case at all. I'm just looking for guidance on a different aspect of the layout, right? So they choose the aspect, and then I actually decide what I get to do within that aspect. So it's not like I'm totally, going by everyone's whim. There's given me some guidance. So it's been a good give and take for the last year, and there's no reason to quit doing that now.
All right, let's talk about the layout, Kansas and Western. So I Googled Kansas and Western, and the AI says there are many railroad companies that had the name Kansas and Western.
Sure. Actually, it's
sure.
It's actually through Pueblo.
Pueblo, south
of there. Yeah, Pueblo, and then on to Canyon City. And the purpose for that route, and there was never a single railroad that ran from, and I grew up in Towanda, which is pretty close to Wichita. There was several railroads, which Towanda was the Missouri Pacific, now Union Pacific, and it ran over to El Dorado. And when I was growing up in Towanda, El Dorado basically had everything that we needed. And so I basically came up with this idea from all our family and childhood trips out to Colorado for the summer.
Right.
And it's a fairly popular thing for Kansans to do, to go out to Colorado. And if you're in the Wichita area, that's the way you go. You just take, Highway 50 out through Garden City, Dodge City, Syracuse, Kansas, I think is the last Kansas town. And then you go all the way into Pueblo, past La Junta Yard. So that's why that's on the layout, because you go right by it. And then into the awesome scenery of eastern Colorado as you go through Canyon City, and then follow the Arkansas River as it winds through the Royal Gorge. And that's my layout.
Let's talk about the layout. It does have a theme. It is HO, that it has a John Parker Fall River feel to it.
I took my original inspiration from Dave Barrow's Cat Mountain in Santa Fe.
There you go. That's awesome. That is awesome, because I love him. I loved him, and his wife, Luann, who was the artist that did all those backdrops.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was his wife that did those. And that's kind of the idea I'm stealing for my N-scale layout, just to make them kind of simple, the backdrops. But yes, the Cat Mountain in Santa Fe, I wish he was still modeling.
Article in Model Railroader came out about his layout. That's what truly inspired me about doing peninsulas around the walls, shelf style. And that's been, my method, I guess, ever since I saw that. And so that's kind of what I've been trying to emulate, where you have scenes, I guess, that are divided by, angles of view. And that's why there's so much trackage, is because, you have a view looking at a particular wall. The main line curves out of view, depending on although I wish I would have had the space to have longer main lines between all these scenes, I'm not regretful about it, because I really like all the action that I have available in each of these scenes. And a lot of it is prototype based, not exact in terms of how many tracks or how long sidings are and so forth. But that's what I used for inspiration, is actual locations, industries in those locations, and what kind of service that they have in terms of trackage and trains. So that's how the layout is.
Are you eventually going to get to, and forgive me if you already haven't, I didn't see it, but I don't think you have, your own lettering for locomotives and freight cars? Will Kansas and Western become a line, or would you just keep doing like UP and MP and whatever motive power?
It's not something I'm against. It's not high on the priority list. I've seen many others do that, and I think it's fantastic to really make your railroad your own by putting your own lettering on. It's just kind of low on the priority poll, I guess I would say.
No, if you do that, you could get to patched out rolling stock easily and have KW patched out rolling stock over old MP or UP boxcars.
Sure, and I already have a logo, obviously, if you weren't aware, and so it's something that, I've turned that into a couple T-shirts, so it wouldn't be a big deal to turn that into a logo to patch onto locomotives and rail cars, but I am trying to represent prototypical operations in the regard of, the road names that either were used or are still used on these lines, so for now, that's good enough for me.
Let me ask you about scenery and structures. Now, I noticed looking under the layout, I saw a lot of Walther's kits. Are you more into commercial kits than scratch building? I've gone commercial kits and weird stuff like oddballs, kit bash buildings that I've got at train shows and all that, because I have tried to scratch build warehouses and whatnot, and I got to tell you, it looks like a kindergarten art project.
It's something that I would love to try, but I think the amount of time it would take to design, choose the right materials, have the right tools to, properly cut pieces so that they're to scale,
yes,
and, so that the parts marry up well. That's more time than I want to dedicate right now, because I'm totally in the mode of building this thing. However, I see it as something that I could go back and update. I'm using obviously primarily commercial kits because I can work with that. I know what the footprint needs to be. So far, I'm fairly happy with all the commercial selections for the industries that I've chosen. There are a few that I am just going to have to scratch build because it's so unique, and I want it to be prototypically accurate as much as possible. But for now, all these commercial kits will definitely stand in. I don't plan on gluing any of my structures in place, so updating those and improving those later on down the road is something I look forward to.
See, that's something I learned from Boomer Dioramas, too. Nothing on my end scale, Las Piedras Railroad, nothing is glued down, even trees, signs, structures, because you can go in there. If you need to do a Saturday morning track cleaning and vacuuming, in 10 minutes, you can have 10 to 15 minutes, maybe a half hour to take everything off the layout, to clean it and do some work. And I used to always, go, okay, it's time to take the Elmers to the structure. Not anymore. Tell you how you feel. How do you feel about that? Because a lot of people are going that way too, with magnets or with blocks.
Sure. I'm definitely into doing, plastruct, can't think of the plastic word right now, styrene, bases for structures. I've seen a lot of guys doing that, where it'll be not just a structure, but all the subsidiary structures, whether it's an outhouse or a doghouse, or even the scenery that surrounds like a house, like the gravel driveway, all that is on a single base. So you can lift that whole thing out, to work on it at your workbench, which is much easier than trying to lean into 2 feet depth of workbench or whatever to work on it. So I really like that idea, and I think that's something at the very least I'm going to pursue. So you can just lift that whole thing right out and do cleaning, like you said, or just work on it on your workbench.
Yeah, I also noticed one thing, too. You're very experimental, like you're doing your scenery, and I believe your first turn, and I can't tell if that's eastbound or westbound, coming into the gorge, where you were experimenting with grout. And I've noticed, I've been working with grout on the first layout that I did in our casita, in our mother-in-law headquarters, was just I think it was like a 1 foot by 12 foot switching layout. It was replicating the Santa Fe in Hemet, California. It was the San Jacinto branch. And when I first started experimenting with sand and dirt, I learned one thing about grout. If you wet it down, it changes colors. And so, and I've also, you were talking about picking different brands of it up. I ended up going with the Home Depot brand. I forget, I have it on a couple of videos, the brand that comes in like a quart or so. And so if I do wet it down, I come back over and I paint it again with kind of a beige paint. And I use it, I dust it on. And when I use it for roads, I just kind of dust it on. And I know people go nuts with that, going, that's just going to blow away and stuff. I'm going, well, you can kind of take grout, and if you have a heavy, stiff brush, emboss it like you're doing weathering powders into the dirt. And it looks better. Because the one thing that I see guys with layouts, and I'm going, oh, this looks great. Then I see a road they've done. I'm going, really? Cat litter gravel? And then the same thing, I'll see guys with telephone poles, and I'm going, really? Those Atlas HO poles that haven't even been weathered, and they've done great modeling and stuff. It's just that everybody has their own little weird thing that they do, their own little niche with stuff. And you're right, by talking about this, and this is where boomers really excel too, and talking about this and sharing it with other model railroaders, we can shave off the weirdness. Like DJ at DJ's Trains just started a new layout. He's an engineer for Norfolk Southern in Pittsburgh. I think it's Norfolk Southern. Yes, it is. Or CSX. He just rebooted his channel and said, I don't want my layout to look like a toy train. And I walk out to that layout every day thinking, what here looks like this road look real? And I look at this and say, we've got to make this stuff look as real as we can. But no matter how hard we want to go to the 180 degrees out of phase of a lifelike grass mat with HO brass track, it's still a model train layout. Your thoughts?
Sure. These things take so long to build, and I don't care if we're talking about a 4x8 sheet or something my size or something, much bigger. You have to decide, what am I going to focus on now? Am I going to focus on making, this one structure as realistic as possible and spend a month doing that? Or do I want to build my layout? And so I've made a lot of choices like that, which, kind of refers back to the commercial structures that I'm building. I would love to learn how to scratch build. I want to have a stud home that I build each individual stud out of balsa wood and just have a home that's under construction, because I went all 4 years in high school to drafting class, loved that, just didn't go into that for a career. But I think that'd be awesome to model, but that's going to take a lot of time, cutting all that lumber to the right specs and everything, and that's not something I want to work on right now.
Right. It's not everybody has a Northwest Shortline chopper. I mean, I don't. I've never had one. I use an X-Acto blade to cut balsa wood. I know what you're talking about, but I'll tell you, a couple of guys that have done it pretty successfully for N Scale is Ron's Trains and Things, just across the border from you in Missouri with his channel, and Jack Burgess, the Yosemite Valley. He actually has an intense shop, but he has a video where he talks about scratch building, and it's pretty simple what he does. And that stuff looks insane. It's awesome on his layout. My dear friend, Ed Kapuscinski, which you've probably seen his video, he's an editor with Railwire. Railwire is predominantly N-scale Railwire forum that I'm a member of and been a member since 2008, I think it is. I said, what do you do when you go to work on your layout? Do you have a plan? And he goes, I walk in and see what I need to do. Well, I used to make all these plans and stuff, and the best laid plans of mice and men. I go in there and I just look at something and go, I'm working on you. Is that what you do? Because I look at the Kansas and Western and there's so much happening.
Well, obviously we spoke about the poll, so that gives me some guidance. And for the most part, the poll results have always been a location, right? So when I give the poll results, I give a work plan. So I give everybody something to look forward to, but not just that. It gives me a plan. Let's try to accomplish these 5 tasks, 6 tasks, or whatever, so that when that deadline rolls around, and I do treat it as a deadline. Like in the last couple of days before I do my construction update, it's like, I really want to get this part done before the next update, because, and I wouldn't say I'm worried about disappointing my viewers or anything like that, but it's a motivator. And I know a lot of people struggle with actually dedicating the time to their layout. I've spoken to several that still love their layout, feel like it's somewhat complete. There's a lot they'd like to do, but they just have a hard time forcing themselves to go in there. And that's what the poll has really helped me with. So among those few items that I list in my poll results video, I just go in there and I pick one and decide, I'm going to work on this today. But, with a lot of things on a model railroad, glue is a thing, paint is a thing, and those things need to dry. So I'll try to think about that in advance. It's like, okay, I'm going to paint something in the background and let that dry while I work on something in the foreground. And so I do think of it in that way. Stuff like track weathering and ballast. You got to paint the track before you ballast it. I know some people do it differently, but that's the way I do it. So I'll paint a section of track, ballast a different section of track, and just work on that. And I wouldn't say I sit in here, all day long on a day off. I probably work for a couple hours and then go do something else so I don't get burned out. But that's generally how it works.
Well, the great thing of it is your basement in planning the house for the layout. When we moved to Derby in 2003, when I was in your area, we went through the house that we bought on Crest Hill Road in Derby, down the street from the high school. We walked into the basement, and there was a fireplace and a living room, another bedroom, and then there was this big room that had this giant closet. And I go, oh, this is it. And I started, before we left that day, after we, saw the house and, put in an offer for it, I had taken out that Scotch tape and marked off the floor. That's that layout I sent you some pictures of. That was that was my last HO layout, and it was based loosely on the Wichita area as well. What's your future plans and future thoughts and final thoughts as we wrap up here?
Just to continue construction. At some point the Royal Gorge is going to get done or close enough that other things are going to start winning those polls, and I'll be happy to work on those areas. The layout itself is almost fully operational. So I guess the next major goal for me is to start getting some crews and doing some real operations over multiple hours. So that's my biggest goal now. And I've made contact with several local model railroaders. That's on the horizon.
Good.
So that's what I'm working on. And I definitely will be shooting some video of that action. So very excited to put something together like that. I think the layout is ready for that. So I guess that's the next big goal.
Do you think we'll ever get to the point where we'll have virtual operators as cyber technically inclined as the hobby's getting, where they'll be at a virtual location?
Sure. And I think I tried to delve into that with my operations videos several months ago, where there was a complex move to be made, and I asked for opinions. How should we move this? Locomotive had to be on either side of the train, had to go down several different spurs, and I got a lot of great feedback on that. And I think people had a little bit of fun trying to figure out what's the best way to do that. So I think I'll do one of those again to get some more interaction from the group.
Any last words of wisdom for fellow model railroaders out there that are checking us out?
Well, I would say that if you're just getting into the hobby, don't dream big from the get-go.
Right.
You really should start small. There's so much to this hobby that you have to learn, so many different skills that you have to learn. Don't try to get, your head big. And the other thing with that is don't be scared by it. Don't look at these huge layouts and think there's no way I could ever build that. Start small, think small, get some experience, and then grow from there. And YouTube is the best resource in this day and age, I think, because there's so much variety, so many different skill sets, and there's tens of thousands of videos out there that teach you how to lay track, teach you how to deal with roadbed, scenery, all aspects of it. So if you're apprehensive, just start cruising YouTube. There's lots of helpful people out there that'll work one-to-one with you even. So that's what I would recommend.
Las Piedras YouTube fans, thank you so much for checking out podcast number 9 with our good friend Allen Cooley, or our new friend with the Kansas and Western on YouTube.